Hey there, my bonsai loving party people. Welcome back to another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. Your host for this podcast, as always, is me, Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu. Thank you very much for listening in. And winter is raging on. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, enjoy that warm weather, possibly a little bit too warm. But for us down south, we're heading towards the shortest day of the year. I know this day because it's my birthday. It's coincidentally. And it's time to make sure that your frost-sensitive plants, your bonsais, are well looked after because it's getting chilly and there's an Arctic blast on the way. It's been here for a little bit. It's coming for all us in the southern part of Australia. So it's just time to be reminded that you need to make sure you've got your shade cloth up or they're protected somewhere around the yard. And I can't work it out, but my Chinese quince that I've got, a big Chinese quince, leaves turned, looked beautiful, nice orange colour, took a couple of photos, cut a few branches up before leaf drop, put it back on the bench, walked past it the other day, it's budded out. The new foliage has come already and we're only late in June. So we're not even past the solstice and we're getting new growth. So anyway, crazy. Just got to make sure they're protected. Anyway, in this episode of the podcast, I want to talk about some important stuff that I've come across lately as I've been working through trees, considering making split decisions. And I just want to give you my thoughts on that. So when you're pruning something, it's like a congested area. What I go through in my head to determine which way I go when I'm pruning. So let's get into it. So things to consider when you're making a split decision. And I'm going to talk about this and I want you to visualize it in your head while you're listening to the podcast. When I say split decision, I'm talking about where you have three things or most likely three things coming from one origin point. And you look at them and go, well, they all look good. They're all nice. Which one do I cut? And it's one of these things that I come across quite a lot where people get a little bit hesitant on doing something because they're sort of like, well, which one's right? Which one's the best one to do? Which one should I cut? Which one should I leave? But what if I cut the wrong one? And that's where everything starts to stop. You know, you work on the tree, the advancement of the tree starts to stop because you look at it and go, I just don't know what to do. I'm just flustered with this thing, and that's really common. You're not alone. Everyone goes through that feeling where you get a bit lost in the decision making process and think, but what if I do the wrong thing? Is that going to set the tree back? No, I'm better off waiting. Can I leave it and see what happens and let things develop? Anyway, I just want to run through a couple of things that I go through with my head because when you have pruning of any kind, deciduous or natives or pines or junipers, whatever it is, you always tend to get these clusters of growth that come from particular areas. And it's invariable that you have to look at it and go, what am I cutting off? And if you listen to some previous podcasts, you'll hear me talk about things like removing the most wrong or the most incorrect, which is still fundamental. But there's some other things you need to consider with it as well. So imagine a three branches coming from one area. So you've got a nice junction, everything's looking good. You've got three branches, one to the left, one in the middle, and one to the right. So common, so common with most plants. It's like, well, what do I do? Which one do I get rid of? And it's easy to say, just get rid of the middle one because the other two are forking away in really nice 45-degree angles, and that's true. Yep, that works. But some other things you need to consider is what about the crowding that's happening around that area of the tree or that particular branch that you're going to be working on. If as you're looking at it, and let's say it's the left one, all right, so we'll focus on that left one for now. So we've got the left, the middle slightly stronger, which is normal, and then the right side. So the left side one, when I come across this scenario, I'll look at it and I go, yeah, sure, is one stronger or weaker? That's an easy kill. If one's super strong, get rid of it. If one's super weak, get rid of it. Go for that Goldilocks principle. You want the just rights. But when you look at it, you also need to take into consideration that you may have isolated the branch, so you have your hand sitting around that part of the branch. And you'll be going, okay, so look at these three things. Strong, weak, yep, done. Get rid of the middle one, perfect, move on. But as you release that branch back into its natural position, or its position where it had been wired, you might find that there's a crowding issue. And this is what I want to focus in on with this part of the podcast, is that crowding issue is something which needs to be resolved. And you can do it, sure, you can wire and readjust that branch and move it around, but try and do it. Try and think about the easiest way to do things with your trees. And the easiest way that you can do it is to consider it when you're pruning. So as you're looking down the branch, this one, the one on the left-hand side, it might be into a particularly crowded area. And that's one of the main considerations I have, not just strength of the branch, but also, is that branch going to continue growing and create an issue for me down the track? That clip and grow type scenario where you cut something, you get it to grow a certain way, and then it continues on down that path. You can prune them so that they don't have that scenario. So if I'm looking at these three, the left-hand one's in a really crowded situation and it's going to create an issue for me down the track, then I'm more inclined to overrule the strength of the middle bud, as long as it's not ridiculously strong in comparison. But when they're pretty similar in thickness or strength of the new bud that's there, but I've got a crowding issue, that crowding issue for me overrules the strength issue. So then I'll go, okay, cool, I'll cut that one on the left-hand side, I'll leave the center, and I'll keep the one on the right-hand side, because that then naturally allows sunlight and air to get into that area. It continues to develop that part of the branch, and it works really nice. So what you've got to ask yourself when you get to these split decisions is, what horticulturally is going to be best for the tree? Or better for the tree. It might not be best, but what's better in that scenario? Am I better cutting it so they fork away nicely at 45-degree angles? Or am I better making sure that every bud in that particular area of the tree tends to get the resources that they need and allows that whole area to develop at an equal rate? I was working on a radiata pine the other day, and really nice tree, massive, so big I couldn't even bring it into the workshop. It just won't fit through the doorway, unfortunately. And I've got a super wide sliding door, and it wouldn't fit through there. It's just too bloody big. And as I was working through this tree, and I'm plucking, cutting, doing the usual, trying to open things up and get sunlight and air in there, I come across some inner branches that are imagine it being like a twin trunk type tree, and there's some branches that sort of grow between those two areas. Look really nice from a distance, great. But when I started working in that area and cleaning, because I'd done the apex and I'd worked on the outer extremes of the tree, the needle quality varied drastically to this inner part where they were dehydrated, for want of a better word. They were just a lot weaker, just a lot thinner. Hadn't grown the buds quite anywhere near as much as what they had on the periphery of the tree. And it's like, well, I know it looks really nice, but I've created an issue for the tree where it's now got an area which is on the path to no good. If I just left this as it is, then I'm going to have real major issues with this tree. So I've got a crowding issue, I've got a sunlight issue, and I've got an airflow issue. So my design concept, or my wish for this tree to look a certain way, is drastically outweighed by the horticultural premise that I want it to be strong. I want it to be healthy. I want this thing to live forever. And if it means that I need to slightly change the design of the tree to make sure that happens, then definitely. So if I've got a crowding issue with any of my branches from that point forward, and that's where I wrote this down in my notes, I went, well, this is what you got to talk about, because it's really common that you get this crowding issue, but you'll be choosing buds based on that flow out from the branch, saying, yep, 45, perfect, let's go that way. That's a nice flow out from the tree. But you're creating another issue for yourself where you're crowding an area where there's going to be a cost to that, where you're going to get dieback, where things aren't going to grow as you want them to. So my result for this was shorten things back, maybe remove a few of the key branches that were above it as well, let some sunlight in there, because I still want these branches to appear as they are and to grow stronger. So I had to then make choices above that branch to let that air and light get in there. And that just means thinning things out and choosing branches maybe that aren't growing in the, at the local level, they're growing beautifully, but at the global level from a tree, when I look at it in its entirety and consider what the impact of branches are going to have on each other, then I needed to make decisions on it. So when you have a split decision, I just want to reiterate one more time, when you have a split decision, consider what's best for the tree. Look at how, or think about how that branches or those buds are going to grow when you make that decision. Don't just think about what's going to look great for now. Think about what impact that's going to have, because if you make a split decision that's going to grow into a crowding issue next year, then you'll have to cut it all the way off, and there'll be possibly nothing, depending on the type of tree, but you'll potentially have nothing behind that back to where that original bud was. So choosing the bud that's maybe in the center on the right-hand side might be a better long-term option, even though right now it might not look quite as good. It'll prevent you getting that crowding issue and therefore taking that bigger step back somewhere in the future. Very common. Make a decision though. And I'll finish this section of the podcast by saying you're better off doing something than nothing. You've heard that before. I'll say it again. You'll hear it in future podcasts. You'll hear it until I've got zero air left in my lungs. Doing something is better than nothing. So don't get stuck on it. If you've got a split decision, bring it back. Don't worry about it. Once it's cut off, you won't even notice that it's gone. Don't leave it though. Don't let it fester and become a major problem for you somewhere down the track. I seriously love bonsai. It makes the hair stand up my arms just saying it out loud, because I'm so passionate about my trees. I'm so passionate about working with other people in their trees. I'm so passionate about just being around bonsai and thinking about all the dorky stuff that goes with it. You know, I just had a conversation with someone about small concave branch cutters. I think about soil mix. I consider what's going to happen for me in coming months with repotting, and I'm super excited about it. And it's funny how once it gets into your core, you can't get rid of it. And if you're starting your bonsai journey, you might have a bit of a spike with your enthusiasm, but once it takes hold, it becomes who you are, and it's become who I am. Like, I'm Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and that's me. That's how I know myself. That's how I see myself. That's how people know me, and it's what I love. Like, I'm really, really proud of it. And I want to talk about now that I've talked about people's bonsai journey, and we live in a world where there's so much information out there. There's a mega amount of information out there, and there's so much noise. So much white noise when it comes to anything that you want to look at or become involved with or be part of. And bonsai is no different. And I think it's easy to become confused or to become conflicted. And I just really strongly encourage you to hold the line and develop. Thick skin's not the right word, but just stay true to what it is that you believe, that you love in bonsai. No matter who tells you something, whether it's me or some other muppet that gets onto social media and says something, or it's a family member or a friend or whatever, because I think that the most important thing with anyone's bonsai journey is you. It's your complete satisfaction. And in this world of noise that we deal with, I come across it almost every day, where I get these messages and it's like, what do you think? And I really take it, as I said before, I take a great pride in answering to my honest ability. But I also think, geez, I might have just made this really difficult for this person who's asked this question, because their whole life, their whole journey might have been of a consistent nature, and they could be really happy with it. And then they speak to me and they're around the other side of the world, and I'm saying something completely opposite to what they have heard or they believe, and I'll always be honest. I'll never change that, and I'll never vary from that line for me, because that's my bonsai path. But I want to encourage everyone that listens that you don't have to follow somebody just because they say. You don't have to listen to what I say. I'm glad that people listen to the podcast. I'm glad you find it enjoyable. I'm glad that it spikes that bonsai love that each one of us have got. But it can be conflicting. It can be confusing, and I think that it's just time to draw a breath a little bit and for me to reiterate that it's about you. It's about you and your trees, and happy, healthy trees that last forever are the only thing that matter. And your complete satisfaction and what you want to get out of bonsai As long as you achieve that, then that's perfect. That's perfection. You don't have to strive for what someone else wants. I've said to you, I want the best bonsai in the world. That's my driving force every time I pick up my branch cutters, when I work on a tree, whether it's or I put a seed in the ground, or I'm taking wire off a tree, whatever it is. That's the thought that goes through my head. Your thought might be, I just want to spend time with my trees. I just want to disconnect from whatever's happening somewhere else in my life and work on my trees. Perfect. You don't have to have my desires and my dreams, and you don't have to have someone else's. You've just got to have your own and stay bloody true to it and never vary for that, because that's where you'll get the biggest bang for your buck, and you'll enjoy this bonsai ride that we're on together the most. People are always there to help, and people, when they give you advice, they're obviously trying their hardest to help you. That they shouldn't be trying to hurt you or be detrimental to what you do. If they are, well, they're just an absolute piece of crap. But if you speak to the right people and surround yourself with the right people, you don't need to follow someone else's path. Just stay true to what you've got. And the last thing that I want to wrap this one up with is that you've got to work on and look at what's in front of you right now. A lot of people that I work with in different workshops, they bring along trees of all different caliber, and sometimes I see people looking at someone else's tree in the workshop, and they're like, "Oh, geez, I wish, this is a piece of crap that I've got in front of me. It's rubbish, it's no good." It's not true. It's absolutely not true. What you've got to do is you've got to just focus in on what you've got and develop a plan for it for the future, but work on exactly what you have in front of you right now. Don't let yourself be drawn to rushing the process and making compromised decisions. Like, I talked about making split decisions. You have to make the tough calls continually with your trees, because if you don't, you're going to settle with something that's not going to make you happy. It's mediocrity, and it's never going to get you to the point that you want to get with. So just make sure you look at and work out exactly what's in front of you right now. Have that plan, have the future vision, but don't force it to be something that it's not, and don't put it in the rubbish pile, because it's not what it's going to be in the future for you. Well, it's a short podcast today, folks. I do apologise for that. Don't worry, next week's going to be a longer one, but like I said, it's my birthday, and I want to get into that freezing cold surf and have some fun with the ocean, with nature. So think of me turning blue and not being able to talk when I get out of the water in a couple of hours' time. But I've got so much to say about bonsai. I just can't believe how much I've got to talk about when it comes to bonsai, and how many future episodes of this podcast I've got, and how many notes I've got about stuff that I want to spill my guts on and talk to you about, because I love it. And I love that. I think the more people that listen, the more enthusiastic I get, and the more passionate I get about it, if that's possible, because I feel it flowing through my veins sometimes, that this podcast is so important to me that I really love it. So It's a good time of year for bonsai. You should be very close to finishing your pine work now. You should be on the slide to having everything ready for repotting if you're in the southern states, and it's almost time to start getting your hands filthy with soil, which is, like I said, it's a lovely time for all of us. So make sure that you get out there and weed your trees at the moment. They are killing me, and I've done my winter spraying of my trees, which is not something I talk about very much because everyone has different opinions on spraying trees, but I've done my winter spray of my trees, so I feel like I'm ahead of the game now. My spirits have lifted. I'm coming to the end of my pine work, which is happy, sad moment for me, but I'm getting there, and it's a good time to be in bonsai, I can tell you. So thank you for listening in, as always. I love it. I love subscribers. I love the people that get in touch with me, so please continue to do so, and make sure that you give the trees a cuddle for me. Until next time, happy bonsai.